Welcome to Conversations. I'm Muqtadar Khan, your host, and today I'm going to talk about Donald Trump's frustration with his own allies. Every other day, Donald Trump is now going on this rant about his NATO allies. This is his latest rant. Trump slams allies as Europeans show reluctance to aid US in Iran war. After spending a whole year lecturing the Europeans that they are no good, they are incompetent, they do not spend enough on their defense, they are not ready to fight, they can't fight, they are unwilling to save the Western civilization. Lectures from J.D. Vance, the vice president, at last year's Munich conference, where he accused the West of not respecting freedom of speech, even while his own government here in the United States was locking away students from colleges for being critical of American foreign policy and the genocide that the US was supporting Israel commit in Gaza, while putting students away and shutting down universities and charging for free speech. J.D. Vance had the temerity to go to Europe and lecture them on freedom of speech. And then, of course, Rubio followed it up. And so, in the last 1 year, 1.5 years that the Trump administration has been in power, about 1.25 years, they have humiliated most of the people in the world. They have lambasted, particularly Europeans, and essentially made the case that you're not worthy of being our allies. America is a great power. The only reason why Europe has survived is because the United States has defended it and supported it for decades, and so on and so forth. Now, the first war that Donald Trump fights against a poor global south country that has been under severe sanctions for nearly 4 decades. Iran has been isolated because of US unilateral sanctions and international sanctions imposed in partnership with Europe. One of the reasons why Iran is such a weak state is because the Europeans helped the United States impose sanctions on Iran, or Iran would have been a far more difficult nut to crack if it was free to trade and sell its oil on the market and invest freely. In fact, Iran is one of the few countries that has missed the 30 years of globalization, which has brought countries like India and China among the top countries in the world. And now Donald Trump, with all his talk about how great America is and how he has ushered a golden age in America, how he and he alone has strengthened American military in partnership with another nuclear power, another major power that was built by the United States, which is Israel. It is unable to crush Iran. In fact, is unable to even stop Iran from retaliating. Imagine this, these two superpowers, these two nuclear powers, the US and Israel, with unlimited access to weapons and money, are attacking a country that has been under severe sanctions for 40 years. And that country is attacking nearly 10 other countries, including these two superpowers. And Donald Trump is literally begging for help from Europeans on a daily basis. And it's not just Donald Trump, it's Marco Rubio, it's Pete Sexit every day. And what is interesting is that they could have done this through backdoor negotiations. Like Marco Rubio could have gone there. Donald Trump could have brought in some of the prominent leaders who anyway visit the United States. He could have sat down with his NATO allies in a closed door session, no cameras, nothing, and told them, so we are sorry we attacked you. We need your help. This is important for the West that we, do whatever we want to do. We are trying to basically destroy a country, and we want to install a pro-Israeli monarch in that country. We need your help. And he could have made a deal with them. He's supposed to be a great deal maker. He could have made a deal with NATO. But no, they're choosing to scold those countries and shame them and insult them into coming to America's help. So on a daily basis, he says, Europe is no good. I don't need Europe's help. Then asks Europe for its help. And when they do not provide that help, he is totally frustrated. It is something so bizarre that I find it like amusing and hilarious as to, like, they don't seem to have any strategy at all. So for example, I want to share this particular story with you, which is important, that even Italy, a country which is governed by uh, a leader who is supposed to be, Meloni is supposed to be a close ally of the United States. Giorgia Meloni is supposed to be a close ally of the United States. And even she said no. It's very interesting. She refused to allow the United States to use bases in Italy for offensive purposes. And the Europeans have come up with a kind of a clever plan, which Donald Trump cannot get around, which is, they say this is inconsistent with international law. So the four countries which Donald Trump has really reached out to is UK, Germany, France, and Italy. These are all G7 countries. In fact, Marco Rubio met with all of them just recently in France, and they have simply refused to help. The help that they are providing is defensive help, and I will show you. I've created a very nice infographics for your benefit to understand how Europeans are. But first, let me also make this point about Donald Trump. Donald Trump keeps saying America is the greatest power and we don't respect international law. We don't need to abide by international law. We don't need anybody's help, blah, 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 blah. So not only is he begging the Europeans for help, now he's going to start begging the Arab world to pay for this war, because the United States public debt has now reached $39 trillion, which is about 1.3 to 1.4, like 140% of America's GDP. So America's debt is more than America's total annual economy. So let me share with you this particular slide. Now this one. So if you look at this particular slide, this tells you how the main European countries are responding to Donald Trump's, shall we say, the requests. So if you look at Europe, for example, the Italians have just refused any offensive roles. They're only protecting shipping lanes. They're only protecting defensive. Italy has agreed to provide some missile help to the Gulf countries to defend themselves. So interceptors, etc. I don't know exactly which ones they are providing. For example, Poland refused to give its Patriot missiles to defend the Gulf countries because it says we need that against Russia in case Russia attacks. So if you look at this infographic, you can see Italy refused offensive roles, only protecting shipping lanes. France has rejected even the coalition. France is not part of the so-called coalition to protect the Hormuz, but France has sent a ship in the region, prefers autonomous naval presence. So France is actually ahead of the other European countries. It's saying, look, I'm not part of your coalition. I'm not going to participate in any attacks on Iran because they are illegal, which is correct, because they do not have any UN Security Council. The only way a war can become legal is if it is sanctioned by the UN Security Council, and the only reason why that will be allowed is if you're fighting a defensive war, which means the war that Iran is fighting against US and Israel. I'm not talking about the Gulf countries, but all the fighting that Iran is doing against US and Israel is legal because it's defending itself from an external attack. But the Israeli and American attack on Iran is illegal from an international legal perspective because they do not have any authority to do this, and they have not been supported. So this is just an aggression which violates the UN Charter. And so the Europeans are saying, you did not go to the UN Security Council and get a resolution to defend this. There is no justification for it. This is illegal. We will not attack Iran. Iran should not be attacking Dubai. Iran should not be attacking Qatar. So we will come there and will protect. Iran should not be blocking the Strait of Hormuz. So we are willing to provide some defense and some security to the ships. So France has sent a ship. It's not part of the coalition. So France has also used this opportunity to exercise its strategic autonomy from both NATO and the United States. The Germans also declined a military role, but they did give speeches. The Chancellor Merz made a speech about Iran, saying Iran should surrender, etc. But materially, they are not supporting. They're not even allowing the shifting of bases. See, what has happened is that Iran has successfully damaged all of US 13 bases in the region to such an extent that US military has moved into hotels. Now, which is another complication, should also be inconsistent with international law, because then it's in civilian areas. You're trying to use civilian as I guess what, human shields. I don't know what. That is what they can be accused of. And so it's a dangerous move what the United States has done. So the US probably wants some bases in Europe where they could move some of these troops. So instead of working out of hotels, they can work out of Europe, and bases in Europe, which the US has many. And the same with UK. UK, with all its talk about it, the UK has allowed its um, air bases temporarily for the use by B-2 bombers, but they are not participating. They're not providing anything else. So except for UK, which is a bit vague, for there's a lot of pressure on UK to provide mine cleaning ships, which can remove the mines from the Strait of Hormuz. There's talk of it, but UK has not done this. So as far as Trump is concerned, they're saying, "Oh, NATO is useless. It's not helping us." So it reminds me on a daily basis as to what a bunch of dumbos the Trump administration is. They're clearly either they are desperate or they are stupid. NATO is not an alliance to attack. It is only a defensive alliance. What people who are members of NATO have agreed to is that if any country is attacked, then its NATO allies are obligated to go to its defense. That is what Article 5 says. But if a NATO country decides to attack another country, then the NATO countries are not obliged. They are not required by the Treaty of NATO to go and attack Iran. Tomorrow, Trump may decide to invade Cuba. Now, Cuba is weak, so Trump is going to act like a big bully, and he's going to pretend as if America is a superpower, attacking and destroying a lowly country like Cuba, which has also been under sanctions for more than close to half century, the way the US attacked Venezuela. But technically, that also NATO is not required to participate even in that attack. Uh, so why are they constantly invoking NATO and ranting away? Because they're so desperate. There are two things I think the Trump administration is trying to do in this war. One is that I think they are running out of supplies. They didn't plan this well. It was not Trump's war. Netanyahu forced them to get into this war. They were duped by false intelligence provided by the Israelis to go into this war, thinking this should be over by now. Iran will surrender, Iran will collapse, the regime will be over, etc. That's not happening. In fact, J.D. Vance, in a phone call, literally apparently scolded Netanyahu for misleading them and saying that there would be enthusiastic opposition from the Iranian public to their own regime. I mean, how stupid do you have to be to think that you can attack a people, kill their children, kill hundreds of school children, bomb their cities, their infrastructure, destroy their heritage, historical heritage? Not all Iranians are like the ones here in America, useless fools who have abandoned their religion, have abandoned their culture, have abandoned their values. And the only thing that they are consumed by is a hatred of their own country and their own government. And I guarantee you that if this regime falls and they get that clown Pahlavi as king of Iranian, none of these are going to go back to Iran and say, "Oh my God, we got our Iran back. Now let's go back and build it. I'm a scientist, I'm a professor, I'm a doctor. Let me go back to Iran and build." No, they are not going to do that. And I think these are the people who the Trump administration thinks are going to rise up They don't have the moral backbone or a core the way the Iranians are standing up to this massive, massive attack. So Donald Trump is now realizing that, oh my God, I'm going to be dragged into a long ground war, this, that, and so on and so forth. And he's losing the support of his own MAGA crowd. He could lose the elections in such a massive way. Already 36 members of the Republican Party who are in the Congress have decided not to run and retire because they are pretty sure that they're going to lose the elections in November. Donald Trump was elected on the agenda of America First. For the last 2 months, and all he has been doing is Israel First. He's become like the puppet of a lobby. And the Europeans are not interested in doing that. In fact, the Spanish government is so upset with the United States that not only are they not allowing the US to use their space, but they have called this war illegal, and they refuse to even allow their airspace to be used. They are saying the US cannot even fly over Spain to attack Iran. So how are US partners in the Gulf responding? Let's look at the Gulf situation, I find that even more fascinating because the Gulf is involved. I mean, they're getting attacked. So here are three countries, the most important countries there, the richest countries: Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and Qatar. These are countries which have played a major role. And well, two of them are also members of the Abraham Accords, like Bahrain and UAE. The whole purpose of the Abraham Accords is to bring peace and prosperity. Let me say that again. The purpose of the Abraham Accords is to bring peace and prosperity. And now what has happened is that America, in pursuit of Israeli interest, has sacrificed these countries in this war. It's like on Eid al-Adha, when Muslims sacrifice goats. Exactly like that, the United States and Israel have sacrificed these Abraham Accords countries, UAE and Bahrain. The United States is not doing much to protect these countries. They are under tremendous assault, their infrastructure. I was reading an article in The Economist. You can also go and read it. They have written only one on Bahrain in the past 2 weeks. And according to that article, Bahrain is completely devastated. It's a country with very little oil resources. It is already in debt, and it won't have money to rebuild at the end of this war. This is the place which is the host to America's Fifth Fleet. That's where Manama, or I don't know how they say Bahrain's capital. In fact, one of my classmates was an engineer. He used to live there, and I used to often talk to him while walking on a treadmill. So every time I think of Bahrain, I think of my friend Farouk. Anyway, talking a little bit more about these countries, all of them, the only thing that these countries have done is in publicly they have said no to this war, and privately they are supposedly encouraging Donald Trump to continue with this war, which is kind of betrayal. Why would you talk to a country, or at least not respond? Because I think it's the Trump administration which is deliberately leaking to Washington Post and other media, saying that these countries are telling us. And it is quite possible that these countries are not telling the US to continue with the war. But the US is trying to send a message because they don't want to be seen as, oh, we are doing everything for Israel, because they want to deny that. I was on a panel at my university with 4 other professors. I was the last speaker. And so they each spoke for about 15 minutes. So I got to speak after 1 hour. And it was amazing to me to see that 4 university professors who spoke about this war without even spending 1 minute on Israel and its role. This war is about establishing Israeli hegemony in the region, about the greater Israel, about distracting. Everybody has forgotten about the genocide in Gaza, about the violence in the West Bank. Nobody's talking about that. These countries have been duped. These are the biggest victims of this war. Iran could come out very strong at the end of it. There was an article in the Financial Times yesterday where the author was arguing that, look, Iran is already lifted sanctions that Iran has been negotiating for, wanting for decades, so that it can sell its oil freely. Trump has lifted that as a result of this war because he wants to bring down the price of oil, and now Iran is going to sell 140 million barrels, which is about $15 billion worth of oil at market price because the sanctions have been lifted. So Iran is going to get a host of revenues coming in. Not only that, they have killed all the moderates and they have empowered the radicals and the hardliners in Iran. It is quite possible that at the end of this war, Iran will withdraw itself from the non-proliferation treaty, the nuclear non-proliferation treaty, and pursue the atom bomb and nuclear weapons. It could become much stronger as a result of this war. Whereas these poor Arab countries will not only have to spend billions of dollars in rebuilding themselves, and if this war ends through negotiations, they may be required to pay reparations to Iran, and they might be forced to pay for the entire war. So what the US is going to do is going to take American taxpayers, and first thing they will do is basically make Israel even richer, pay off all of its damages, replenish all its weapons so it can attack more countries tomorrow. So about $20 billion, $30 billion will be given to Israel right away, very soon. Just watch that. If Republicans win the Congress, they're just going to give the keys to the US Treasury to Netanyahu. And the second thing that's going to happen is the US is going to give a bill to these countries saying, we spend $1 billion a day. We've been fighting this war for so long. Here's a bill for $50-60 billion. And in that, they will add the money that was given to Israel. So Saudi Arabia and UAE and Qatar and other countries will have to pay for their own repairs. They'll have to pay for Iranian repairs. They'll have to pay for Israeli repairs. And they'll have to pay for the American war itself. And at the end of it, they will not be safe. They will not be secure, because this Iranian regime is going to teach them a lesson once this war is over. If the regime survives, then they are in deep trouble. So coming back to our original point, Donald Trump on a daily basis is realizing that he cannot bully the West and also be the leader of the West and also enjoy the support of the West. One of the things that the unilateralism of Donald Trump is doing is it is destroying the collective identity of the West, even though they want to talk about the West as white and Christian. But they take so much money from the Israeli lobby that then they confuse it with the Judeo-Christian thing and the Israeli thing, etc. So it's not really, when they say white Christian, they also mean Israel or subordinate to Israel. But not everybody in their own parties. So you have a right, which is about white Christian nationalism all over the Western world. But the right of the right is very anti-Semitic. And right now in the US, they've become very anti-Israel. In fact, talking about extreme right-wing, AfD, the alternative for Deutschland, for Germany, the most extreme right-wing party of Germany, is also not with Trump anymore on this war. So the consequences, one of the consequences of this war for Donald Trump is going to be the fragmentation of the Western identity, or the destruction of the Western identity. Thank you for watching Conversations. I'm Muqtadar Khan, your host. And if you have not already subscribed to this channel, please subscribe to this channel, like this video, press the bell icon, and don't forget to share this video with your socio-political network. If there are some interesting questions or comments, I see a lot of members of Conversations here. So let me just say hello to them. Hello to Sunny Singh. Italy is in recession, can't save its economy. Don't miss a few shows that I will be doing in April. We'll talk a lot more about Italy in April. most of Europe is like that. I don't think that, except Poland, I think there's no other country which has a growth rate of more than 2%. So all of these are borderline cases, 1%, 1.5%. And with the rise of oil prices, they're already talking of work from home to cut supplies. They're becoming like Pakistan. Pakistan, about 2 weeks ago, shut down its schools and universities and told people to work from home. That's what is going to happen in Europe too, Sunny. They've already announced that. Nadia, that's a very good thing. US has a lot of weapons installed. In fact, um, during the war in Gaza, Israel was using all the stockpiles of weapons that the US has had there since 1980s. US has military presence there. Joe Biden sent many senior military planners, etc. The reason why the US does not need a base in Israel, because there are some people who think that Israel itself is a base of the United States. It's a frontier settler country of Western, last vestiges of the Western colonial project. So you could say that Israel itself is an American proxy, like America's Hezbollah is Israel, because we pay for everything it does. We give it all its weapons. In fact, France, either France or UK did not allow the US to send planes to Israel. It was sending planes full of military equipment. There's no tracking of this at all, you know. So Israel has so deeply colonized America. Is I remember I used to invite a lot of our senators, etc. Now I don't invite them because they're all spokespersons for APAC. But one of the very prominent senators on Senate Foreign Relations Committee used to come on my show, and we had a very public. You can go back and search the show, and you'll see I pressed on him about America's defense budget as to why there's no clarity of how much money we have actually given to, say, Ukraine, for example. Like, why is there no web page, one page as a democracy? I would like a web page to be on either the White House or the Department of Defense, where at any time I should be able to go and see how much money in cash we have given to Israel, how many bombs we have given to Israel, how many weapons we have given to Israel, whether they have been sanctioned by the Congress or not, and whether they have been vetted for the laws of this country, which prohibit America from giving weapons to countries that violate human rights. The amount of violence the Israelis are committing in the West Bank and Gaza, they will not meet those standards. In fact, you can go back and see there was a Senate hearing where I forgot the name of that guy. There's a State Department guy who actually says, oh, Israel is in compliance with all human rights regulations, and so we can give them weapons. And he was having trouble explaining how those weapons were transferred to Israel. These what if questions are quite ridiculous. What if the West had not colonized the Middle East? What if England had not colonized the Arab world? This would not have happened. There would be no Israel. You can go back. Why go back to 48? Let's go back to 1757. What if the British Empire was defeated by the Mughals and the so-called Sepoy Mutiny of India in 1857? 1757 was the Battle of Plassey. Thank you very much, Hafiz. Oh, there are lots of problems. I think India's growth rate will collapse to maybe even below 6% this year in 2026. If this war continues for another 3 months, India's growth rate will go below 6% or even below 5%. And not just India, for most of the world, maybe except China, because it's not as impacted right now by the oil but China's exports could decline if all the other countries which are importing Chinese stuff, if they become suffering, right? So, like, we as Americans, we buy a lot of rubbish stuff that comes from China. Look at a Walmart; it's full of Chinese stuff. But if we start feeling the inflation and we find that we don't have enough disposable income, we'll buy less stuff, which means then China will sell us less stuff. So China's economy could also get hit because of decrease in consumption by the global markets. Anyway, thank you very much for watching Conversations. Please like this video, press the bell icon, and don't forget to share this video with your socio-political network. I will probably come back in 30 minutes, and I want to introduce you to a new report that has come out on India and US relations. I'll be doing that show in Hindi, which is very condescending report. And so I want to provide a small critique of that. So come back in another half an hour. And thank you for watching. Bye.